Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this SeaGen podcast. We are honoured today to welcome Sir Timothy Smit, Knight Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire and founder of the Eden Project, to join us. Sorry, Tim, I couldn't resist putting your full title into this because what a mouthful.
The only person ever who's called me Timothy
Mm.
is my dear late departed mama, who ever used that word whenever she was especially cross with me.
Oh
But that is the
dear.
only
Well,
time.
we're starting on a bum note.
No, no,
Please don't feel told off.
it's all right. I don't mind starting in a slightly disciplinarian way. Mean to go on as I start.
We shan't try to control you. Please speak freely. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to have what should be just a casual chat through the meandering world of the Eden Project and the oceans and what might be done about those. So without further ado, I've done a bit of research and watched a few of your amazing talks online. But in your own words, would you be able to tell us a bit about the Eden Project and the chaos that caused it to come about?
Well, crikey, yeah, that's an unusual start. The chaos that caused it to come about. Well, I began the Eden Project as a sort of dream. I realized early on in my life that I have a weird condition, which I thought it was just normal life, that you could have a dream and then kind of ride your dream and make it real. And I can do that when I go to bed at night. I can start the dream that I want, and I can then go to sleep, and I'm living that dream. And I thought everybody
Wow.
could do that, and apparently they can't. And so I've always dreamt up worlds and dreamt up things, and I dream also how to make them happen. I don't fantasize. So I think that's a really odd but important point to make. Is I've got great impatience with people who are utopian dreamers without
Mm-hmm.
any link to the reality of life that is necessary to make things happen. An awful lot of the dreamers that I've met actually annoy the shit out of me because well, they have this ability to be motherhood and apple pie. So I want to do this, and then suddenly, boof, there it is, and you go, well, actually, you need a few skills like emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Realize your own deficiencies, because if you don't know yourself, you are destined to repeat your mistakes, and also to become very dispirited because, well, you meet so many people, don't you, that
Yeah.
have a succession of failures behind them, and they just don't seem to understand that maybe there is some, not a flaw necessarily, but something they haven't quite grasped or haven't been taught. Or like, I know that as a dreamer, regardless of the fact that I'm a practical man in terms of understanding the processes, I
Mm-hmm.
understand the soul of a banker. I have been to hell in order to understand this, but the soul of a banker is a desire to have adventure and excitement and daring do, followed by the absolute certainty that to believe in it will end in certain hell for them. Therefore, in order to persuade a banker of anything, you need to demonstrate that you've already anticipated their darkest fears and have a solution for it.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, never ask a banker for more money than they can afford to give you. Therefore, always surprise them by underestimating what you want, and then giving them reasons why actually you're underestimating it, because, to be honest, you're even more ruthlessly pragmatic than they are. Then, just as they still think they're being flummoxed, you then present a really good finance person at your right-hand shoulder, and then they go, oh my God, they understand that they should have a finance person. And then you produce somebody who's built nuclear power stations and roads and houses and everything else. So at this point, all of their worries about you have gone, and they have a beatific smile on their face, and they sign the check. But it's because you've actually anticipated their fears.
Mm-hmm.
About
Okay.
anticipating fear and desire, and then terrorize people. The last thing to understand is the deep-seated fear of most, especially men, is to be like that guy who turned down the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
He will forever be known as the man who turned down the Beatles with the immortal words, guitar bands aren't going to catch on anytime soon. Now, when you start to talk to people about, do you want to tell your grandparent, your grandchildren that you turned us down, with the same tone of voice that you feel rather pitying of them for not seeing the opportunity for eternal or an immortal, legacy, and instead will just have made a decision to say no, it suddenly makes the word no seem actually rather a nasty thing to say, and yes becomes much more probable.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I wasn't expecting to come in and get VC fundraising tips, but maybe we should retitle this to how to raise money for your startup or your crazy idea.
Oh, well, maybe. But the truth is that great things, everybody wants a hero story, and no one wants to know about, how did Superman actually get his underpants on over his trousers? Do you know what I mean? There's a kind of weird, it's almost like people want to believe in fairy stories, and I'm not really interested in fairy stories. I'm actually really interested in the how do you catalyze these amazing things called human beings into doing things which get somewhere vaguely close to what they're capable of. Because by Jove, we have an immense talent as human beings for seizing defeat from the jaws of victory. Do you know what I mean? We have all of the talent, and then we get into again. I do have a hatred. I'm talking about as a generality of middle-aged men, not because of their genders, but because middle-aged men are responsible for probably 90, maybe even as much as 95% of all the wrongs in the world. Their asinine vanities and lack of personal insight, and their testosterone, which takes them into places which mad people don't even want to go. I mean, so you must have seen. I mean, you can't possibly comment, of course.
No, I have no idea. Mike, any thoughts?
I'm still flummoxed from the snatching defeat from the jaws of victory comment, because as a Welsh rugby fan, you really hurt me there.
Oh God. We aren't allowed to talk about the rugby because we are on different sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Oh well. No, I'm empathetic to your sorrows. What can we say? No, it's true though, Mike, isn't it? I mean, let's talk about something you and I talked about. Universities, right? Universities on paper should be the most extraordinary thing, because in any good university, you will probably have representatives of is this right? Probably every single nation on earth, but pretty close, working in something. So that's a pretty symbolically cathedral-like amazingness. And then you invent something called an academic. And academics they're almost like thoroughbred horses that were shy at any paper bag in a hedge. Their only interest is the narrow conviction that their role is to persuade other people who are as obsessed about the subject as they are, that they know just as much, if not more, than the other person. If you actually said to an academic, your job is the most noble one on earth, you've got to teach young people to reach the full element of their potential, they think you were speaking Esperanto. I mean, it's absolutely astonishing. And
wow, you're tearing into Mike right now. This is awesome.
Well, no, but I mean, you must have seen this thing where they gallop around their snouts in the trough of the latest grant without a thought for the national interest or their fellow citizens. It's just we got a grant. Anyway,
some academics do get very blinkered. I mean, I think the thing that academia is missing at the moment is we're not teaching the next generation to think properly. We're teaching them facts, and I mean, it's something I feel quite strongly about. You teach someone a concept, it'll stay with them for life. You teach someone a fact, they'll forget it. And if I want facts, I'll just look them up on Google. But there's no point in learning facts. I think we teach our kids now to regurgitate facts in exams, and then we put a number on how well they can regurgitate facts. And I think the world would be a better place if people had more understanding rather than ability to regurgitate facts and not put them together. I mean, the ability to take different concepts and ideas and merge them and come up with creative ideas. I mean, that's what we need right now. But we seem to be sort of pushing the system towards creating robots.
And this is either a true
grant writers.
I don't know, Paddy. Is this actually a true insight, or is it a man who was once caught out in a pub quiz? I don't know.
Well, I have a very, very high regard for Mike, and he's a doer. We have started a company together to try and make some change. So,
But I am not a typical academic.
You're not a typical academic.
You're not. I've given you a pass, mate. That's why I'm talking to you. You've become an honorary citizen of the world.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's go dig into a waking dream where you've walked into was an old China mine in Cornwall.
Yeah, China
and
mine,
seen the vision for what it could be. Like, how did that happen?
Well, it was actually quite easy, because I had, before I did Eden, I had restored a garden called the Lost Gardens of Heligan. Well, they were called Heligan, and I named them the Lost Gardens of Heligan. And it was a job that I knew nothing about plants except green side generally faces the sun. That was all I knew. I knew nothing else. I mean, I could recognize a rose or something, but nothing much more. But I had been an archaeologist before, and I'm fascinated by the plates of time of people having lived out lives in a landscape. And I was fascinated by the residue of the memories of that life and what that meant. And I realized when I decided that I loved Heligan, having gone round, I went round it with the person who just inherited it, who had no money and could never restore it. The RHS had seen it, and the National Trust had seen it and said it was beyond redemption. And I just thought it was beautiful. And if I thought it was beautiful, one of the things I'd learned after I was an archaeologist, I'd been in the music industry. And one of the things I'd learned, which I wish everybody understood, is that if you love something, if you love something and you are not a freak, there will be millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of other people who feel the same. Therefore, the only issue is marketing. So when I found Heligan, I knew it was going to cost a lot, but I knew that its bones, however overgrown, carried with them a sort of gentle melancholy, a storytelling mystery. And humans love nothing more than mystery. They adore mystery. That is why it's really funny. There's some research I saw about people with perfectly symmetrical faces. They often become supermodels. They never have much love. And I think the reason is humans like the inadequacies of perfection. Perfection is a kind of weird threat. It becomes a bland, vanilla-ish quality. It's funny. I mean, when you look at your best mates and then suddenly you see in the sun their faces shown up with a different shadow, a different silhouette, and it's as if you've never met them before. It's kind of a very funny thing. You say, I didn't know she had a weak chin, or oh, I know, but you know what I mean. There's a sort of
yeah.
And I just fell in love with Heligan, and I said, I'm going to restore it. I didn't have much money, but I knew how to do a deal. And what I said to the owner was, I can't pay you any money, but I'm going to do you the best deal you ever had. I'm going to offer you 20% of the ticket revenue minus VAT of every person who comes into these gardens after I've restored them. So he had to take faith. He had to have complete faith that he was going to give his gardens to me on a long lease in the hope that I would open them to a public in a world in which there was no track record of it. So my selling gift was to say, watch my smoke. I'm going to open this place and it's going to be really famous. But I knew how to make it famous because I know that people love mystery. So I spoke to the BBC and I said, you've got one shot before I go to the other channel. You've got until tonight to tell me whether you want to film what is going to be the greatest garden restoration in history. And I had no idea whether it was or it wasn't going to be, but I knew that if I thought it was magic, I could convey that it was magic to others. And before nightfall, Stefan Buchatsky at the BBC said, I'd love to do it. And anyway, the documentary of us restoring the garden went on to become documentary of the year as a 10-part documentary series. The book that I wrote about it became book of the year. But all of it is to do with the conviction in romance. Everything ultimately is about love. And those who are embarrassed about love or who do not have an emotional literacy actually find it really difficult to progress in the world of ideas and creativity. and even more in the world of connectivity, because ultimately you can have the greatest brains in the world in the same room, but if one of you doesn't throw great parties, no one wants to come. To be honest, it's a really strange thing. There is an MBA book on how to be successful, which should be written, which is actually all about enjoying someone's company is everything. Almost. There are exceptions, I know that, but it's a sort of exception. There are some people who are utterly brilliant and utterly loathsome that you sometimes realize you just need, but
on occasion. Wow, amazing. Okay, this is
so you asked me
very
about
philosophical.
So you asked me about Eden.
Yes.
Having restored we get this, in 1991, when we started doing the vegetable gardens and the greenhouses, we would be the only working garden, full productive gardens in the whole of Britain.
What? Wait.
The National Trust had bulldozed every single major part of the productive garden. Even Chatsworth in 1981 had turned, that's the home of Sir Joseph Paxton, who built he was the head gardener for the Duke of Devonshire there. They had bulldozed their productive gardens to turn it into a caravan park.
Oh, wow.
No, this is really sinister. Get this.
Yeah.
What this actually shows you is that those who would be the so-called aristocracy, or those who are charged with looking after the history of the working people of this country, believed that those who went out for some entertainment were not going to be interested in the history of working people. The working class was completely thrown out. And this has been borne out, staying on my high horse, and I am deeply, deeply angry about this. This internalized snobbery has seen a political class undermine something which Britain was the world's leader in, horticulture. To the point that they have, as a brand, started to treat horticulture and agriculture as something that is done by the third thickest child of the third thickest child. The quality of training is execrable and the respect is terrible. And it just makes me want to weep. Don't these jerks realize we will need to eat? Do they not realize that with global warming, all the places they think they're going to get cheap food are being purchased by countries richer than us? It's absolutely amazing. If you want to actually have an essay in despair, madness, and complete misdirection, spend some time with Tory politicians talking about food crises. It's absolutely magic. So I'll finish, and then Mike can sing for his supper. So, having got the productive gardens at Heligan restored, and everybody told me, oh, well, if you'd be lucky, the most visited garden in Britain at that time was 80,000 people a year. And people just flooded in. Before you knew it, we were 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 people. And most of these were people who'd never been to a garden before in their lives. They were fascinated. You make something accessible to people, and you talk about it in their language with anecdote that they can get hold of, and create a sort of sense of it. I would talk to people who came to Heligan about the fact that, did you know that in April, up until about 1860, all over Britain, April was known as the dying month or the hungry month, depending. Well, because these horticulturists had to work out, how do you grow food that will last you 12 months a year? And when you look at how you do that, by golly, is it difficult. You need a lot of art, and you need to choose about, there are certain things for taste, or certain, the taste, flavor things. But then you've got all of this stuff about keeping, like there's a whole range of apples that don't taste very nice, but actually you put them in straw and in a dark room, and they can last right through to the beginning of April with a degree of sweetness. Taste like blotting paper, but it'll give you some nutrition. And actually that skill, that brilliant applied science, it's an applied science, just like medicine or pharmacy or engineering, and it needs to be respected. Anyway, I was getting really excited about productive plants and the excitement of doing all this, and then seeing an audience that was growing. One day I had the idea of the moonscape up in, which is the spine of Cornwall, which is the home of the China clay industry. And I said, to myself, wouldn't it be great to do like a garden festival? You remember they had garden festivals for a period? They began when Heseltine did one in talked to the Liverpool Garden Festival to restore and regenerate Liverpool. And they went from there to Glasgow, to Stockton-on-Tees, to Stoke, to Wales. Wales was the last one. But they used garden creation, big scale, take like the Chelsea show, make it 5 times bigger, build some infrastructure, and it will regenerate. And actually, it did regenerate that part of Liverpool. The other bits turned out to be a bit unsuccessful because they had this idea that it would last for a year, and nothing's very successful. It just lasts for a year. The Eiffel Tower is meant to last a year, so that didn't do badly. So I thought, well, let's do that in the Clay District of Cornwall. Those grants had ended, but I saw these amazing holes in the ground, and I said, right. It reminds me of the Lost Worlds of Arthur Conan Doyle. And so I suddenly thought of a crater of a volcano in which would be a lost civilization and these amazing glass houses. Now, people always say, Tim, you're such a visionary. And I say, you could take me to any school anywhere in Britain, and anybody between the age of 8 and 14 would have invented something like that. That is not vision. Right. It's not. That's what we do. The issue is that you believe that you could persuade a whole class of people professionally trained to only use the word no to say yes. That was the only visionary bit. And from that
is quite a skill, though.
Yes, but it's a storytelling art. Mike's got it. I've got it. It's actually putting ideas together which paint a picture in people's imagination. And then you need to create a sense around it that most people are carrying a tiny grain of disappointment about themselves, wherever they are, whatever age they are, which is to do with the hopes and prospects they had for the future, which are now well behind them, and wondering whether that dream they had is now dead. And if you can create a stage big enough, this is why so many people in England fuck up. They're so self-deprecating. They make their vision too small. And if it's too small, other people can't buy into having a space on the stage. Strangely, it was easier to raise 100 million than 10,000 quid.
Right.
I know that sounds like the sort of thing some big shot bloke says. It's true. If you stand up and you say, this is going to transform all of this, it's going to give us a vision that's going to reposition Cornwall in the world's imagination, it's going to have this impact, that impact, you can see people want to believe it. And at that point, your duty is to put in place the bricks of their insecurity and put the cement in, as I was saying earlier on, with the banker and the project manager. And so we raised all that money, and we persuaded really top people to work with us for nothing until we had the money. But there is a kind of momentum that builds up there's a lot of crap talked about, and there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. Well, ending world poverty has been around for a fucking long time, and that hasn't worked. Do you know what I mean? There's we love truisms, but sorry, I didn't mean to swear on your podcast.
Please swear. We cuss. That's all.
You cut. We cut. In fact, everything you said.
Oh really no, we cuss.
We cut. Yes. That sounds
brilliant.
Like a mafia agency. We cut. Yes.
Well, I mean, you never know, right? We're open. We're open-minded, aren't we?
That's all right. But that's the end of the story. That's how Eden came into being. A dream, a civilization, great horticulturists, great builders, and everybody becoming collective fantasists. We even had constructors and architects working together as friends. That hasn't happened probably on a big project in Britain.
I believe that, having done a house renovation. Brilliant. Okay, that's very inspiring and really fun to hear. Thank you very much.
Mike must really enjoy these podcasts where the guest talks too much. It's his turn.
Well, yeah, go on, Mike. Well, let's talk about Eden Project for the Ocean and what we're doing, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. How you've already given some pretty strong pointers, so we don't want to ask you the same questions over and over again. But Mike, let's talk about what we're up to and see what Tim thinks.
I mean, we've spoken in the past, Tim, about the sort of our vision for and I'm kind of glad that I gave you the massive vision of sort of robots in the ocean and sort of really accessing the marine environment and sort of kind of developing it, industrializing the marine environment, but in a sustainable way. And I think something you really you mentioned it earlier was humans adore mystery. And I think that's why we have such a sort of a wonderful connection with the ocean, is because it is a mystery to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really interested in your views on what you think as we go into the ocean more with cameras, with robots, and we understand it more. Do we risk losing people's love of the marine world because it's not a mystery anymore? So, are we going to be battling against people who don't want to open their eyes to the marine world because it's easy enough to say, oh, we don't know anything about the marine world. We know more about the surface of Mars than the deep ocean, which is rubbish. Don't get me started on that. But I mean, are we going to be battling that sort of ecosystem? What do you think? That's a killer question.
Okay,
or maybe not.
You start with the flaw. The flaw is the desire for all humans to be infused with this sense of mystery. Where does this faux democracy come from in your part? Surely all you mean is, how do we stop people screwing up the ocean? After that, whether they feel any mystery or not, I don't care. I don't care at all. I just want them to stop eating it all up. The world isn't full of Platos. If there were 8 billion Platos on Earth right now, it would be insufferable. It would be like everybody wanting flying ducks over their fireplace. You wouldn't be able to get hold of any flying ducks. The ocean, the thing about humans, you and I've talked about this, which I find absolutely baffling, is we spend most of our lives trying to set ourselves apart from nature rather than being part of it, which is it's a commonly held thing to say. But the thing that's most extraordinary is to have a bunch of people on a television screen having a chat to each other about, what does the ocean mean to you? You mean, other than the fact that you are made up of 70% water? I mean, other than that, what do you think you might have in common with the ocean? I mean, just a small thing like 70% kinship immediately without even having had a word. And what else have I got to do? Tides can't have anything to do. The moon can't have anything to do with me. It's absolutely astonishing that our elite self thing, where anybody who implies what I've just said is considered hippy dippy rather than ruthlessly practical. I mean, it's just unbelievable. What's that thing? Is if it smells like a turd and it looks like a turd, chances it is a turd. And I think that law is painfully avoided. The ocean is obviously, this is your expertise, so you're landing me with a fork. But let us say it's 3/4 of the surface of the Earth is ocean, and we came from the ocean. We know that we came from the ocean. Genetically, we came from the ocean. And I think it's actually astonishing when you look at things like stromatolites and all this stuff to realize that, guys, do you not realize that for you to exist, for us to be having this conversation inside, if you dismembered us, you would find the origins of life itself, because it's not possible for us to exist without having carried strains that have come with the first, lightning strike of life. I think it's absolutely astonishing that I look across this screen while I'm seeing Paddy in front of me, but the idea that somewhere inside you, if we peeled off your face and whatever, and we went behind the muscles, the bones, but there is some catalytic force inside you, which was equivalent to that first cyanobacteria, the first amino acids and whatever that were formed with God knows what it was that formed us. But isn't it astonishing that we are the sole product, that maybe you are life's vote? I think that's the really most amazing thing, is that you could be life's vote for a type of species that maybe you can take all species forward. And we then, in order for us to keep going and being optimistic and writing books and making concerts and things like that, all useless in terms of life as a whole, but we need to have our own heroes. But isn't it astonishing that you could have been voted for, that all of that stuff is just us experimenting for whether we can get life somewhere else? So actually this desire to actually have us originate an idea for a space rocket, and that we could go to the moon, and then we invent an Elon Musk or whatever who does whatever, and then we go to Mars. This could all be part of life's great pattern to create, that cyanobacteria, right originally, as life was started in our ocean, could have had a huge plan that was going to see the intelligence grow, and then we'd learn how to colonize, and then go. You know, I'm not saying this is all true, by the way, although it does please me to feel that it might be. It leaves you in some horrible places in terms of your intellect. If you are basically a questioning person, it leads you to all sorts of words or philosophical propositions about gods and life forces and all the rest of it. I remember, it is odd, isn't it? It is.
Yeah.
If you leave your mind open and remember not to make a joke for at least a minute, you suddenly realize how astonishing life is. And most people have never stopped to think just what an extraordinary miracle it is. I mean, the fact that you can see, the smell, taste, that you just know that you're related to things. And then you create a culture, which is brilliant, like our own culture in Britain. I was saying to someone the other day, what would it be like if an entire nation had PTSD? What would it be like? And I said, look at Britain. That's what it looks like to have a whole nation with PTSD. No, isn't it?
I was going to say, I feel like we do.
Well, yeah, but you say it as I would say it as a joke, and then almost everybody I talk to regrets that you've got children that are going hungry, that you've got education not level, that you've got a whole bunch of things that we feel that if you had to say you had a religion, your religion might say the mediation of some of those conditions would be part of it, part of it, and we allow it to go on, and we allow people to lie to us. And this is not a left-wing or right-wing thing, but we just allow a whole bunch of things that are against our values to continue, and we continue drifting. What do you think that's doing to whatever you might call what's in your soul, or even if it is a soul, whatever that thing is that we give the name soul? What do you think is being done to it? A species that has got all these values, that it is evidence that it's creating things that go completely antithetical to it.
I mean, I think there's a lot to be said around midlife crises and the way that people respond to this sort of kernel of disappointment, which probably comes back to that. You know, there's a amount of hope and good that that many people want to do in the world, and then seeing suffering continue and seeing that isn't being solved by things that you're doing. I think probably a lot of the sources for people kind of go off the rails, and maybe in their sort of 40s and 50s getting to a point where they're like, hell no, I'm going to go do something about this. And
then you get middle-aged guys go off to the middle of Africa to dig boreholes, and they don't know how to dig a fucking borehole, so they become a meal to eat, and then they're there feeling really good about their souls. It's like half the people I know who work for NGOs. You say, for heaven's sake, why don't you just have a badge made on your shoulder which says, I want to look good and be worthy, but don't please work for that NGO because you're no good at the job, you know?
Well, choices are very hard to make, aren't they? But we hope there's legs in what we're doing.
Of course.
Let's see.
And flippers.
Flippers. Flippers. No, but sorry, Mike's question was about life and trivial stuff like that, wasn't it? About why the oceans, the mystery of the oceans will forever, provided we have imagination, will exist. I mean, I worry about the Amazon or deep rainforest, because I think also preserving the rainforest, we're selling it to ourselves because we've been taken over by accountants who believe that things are only worth saving if you can find some value to human beings through them, without actually understanding the spiritual hunger that needs feeding as well. And rainforests and things were always important in terms of harboring mystery, and the hidden creature in the rainforest was always someone's god. You do know that. I mean, it has always been about finding the reason that was the mystery that made sense of the world. And the moment you burn down a rainforest, or you've climbed Everest, or most disgusting of all, in 1969, we sent people to the moon. How could they have done that? I mean, all romance died that day, I felt, and I told, this is name dropping, I've never said this before, but I told that Buzz Aldrin. I did. I said, you put a hammer in the name of love for me, mate,
Oh, blimey.
Yeah.
What did he say back?
He said, no one's ever said that to me before. And we shared something, because I said to him, I was very nervous to talk to him, and I said, have you ever been scared? he gave me the most fantastic answer, because it went like this. It was no. So what I said was, when I watched the film Apollo 13, there's that scene with all that liquid nitrogen. It's night, it's dark, and this huge rocket, and the whole end of that rocket is just smoking and ready for thing. I said, people are getting into a rocket. Basically, they're sitting on a bomb. I mean, let's be honest, they're sitting on a bomb. Were you not really nervous and anxious? And in fact, would it be true to say you were more scared of being thought a coward than of dying? Therefore, once you'd said you were going, but And he laughed and he said, "No, I was a test pilot." He said, "I've never been scared of flying or all of that sort of stuff, because I was drawn into it. It was the thing I loved to do, and I was always aware of it." And he answered, it's very poetic, because there was this long pause. And he said, but now you think of it, yes, I have been scared once. Once I was real scared. I waited for him to answer. He said, in my first spacewalk, I heard about, in space, not on the moon. He said there was this moment when I was tied to this lanyard onto the spacecraft, and I was just thinking, I was just drifted off, and I suddenly thought that if that lanyard broke, beneath me is forever.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
That sends a kind of shiver up your spine, doesn't it?
I would have been terrified then and all of the other times. So
yeah. Yeah, but I guess after about 100 times of having a bomb put up your ass, you don't feel quite worried.
It probably won't explode this time. It hasn't the last few hundred.
Yeah, that's when they get you.
Oh my goodness. Well, we'll try not to uncover all the mysteries of the ocean. I shouldn't think we're very close at all.
No. Did you get that picture from Rob about that little creature, that iridescent creature, the film? He sent it this last week. It was what do you call those little squiddy things?
Copepod.
Yeah, it's a copepod. This copepod that goes invisible, and you can only see it when the light hits it at a particular angle.
Oh,
Did you see that?
I didn't see that, no.
I think it may well be. I never thought that a scientist could have a sense of romance, but when Rob wrote and he said, "I think this is the single most beautiful thing I have ever seen," and he sent it, and I've sent it around to all my colleagues, and they've all gone, "Oh my God, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen."
Oh, wow.
Very beautiful.
Can you send it to us?
I don't know. I think I may have sent it to everybody else.
I think if Rob sent it to you, you might have sent it to me, and I probably didn't think it was as beautiful as you did. But then beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Maybe it was too symmetrical.
Mike ignored it, and
well, I mean,
his academic side.
You find beauty in different things, though, don't you? I mean, like when I met Tim a few weeks ago, I was saying now some of the images on the top trumps that the Eden Project created to sort of talk about the plants and the microbes that they're interested in. Some of those images for me are absolutely beautiful. And you find so much beauty in sort of irregular as well as regular shapes and things. And
you are into microbes. That's true. Maybe that's why the copepod wasn't interesting. He's more of a microbial guy.
Yeah, maybe the copepod was just too big for me.
No.
Maybe.
He's always hated large print books. No, it is interesting. It is interesting. I saw a picture that had been put together by you will have seen it, Mike, the picture that was put together by the guys at the Hadron Collider with, I can't remember, it was one blood cell blown up. Have you seen that picture? It is astonishing. It's as if, when someone talks about the alphabet, you've then got to imagine a letter which isn't there. It feels almost impossible. And when you saw this thing of the one blood cell really blown up, almost every shape that you can bring to your mind as existing is existing in that one picture. It's as if life's adjustments to all the different pressures, and including the pressures that we don't yet know exist, it's like a complete lexicon of life, which is just so exciting to look at. And that's got a mystery to it, hasn't it? It's got a got a really profound mystery, and true mystery is actually quite scary. There was an exhibition at the the Natural History Museum of pictures called Other Worlds. Did you catch that? Of pictures taken by all of the spacecraft, of planets, where they landed a thing that could take a few pictures just before it exploded or whatever. And there is something indescribably lonely about seeing a Martian landscape, for example, knowing you will never, ever be able to go there, that its existence, its granularity, might as well be in your imagination, but nothing you know will ever be there. It's just
apart from maybe Elon Musk.
Yeah, but he won't go to that bit, I mean, I really hope he does go to Mars and then maybe stays, but
oh, sick burn.
No, but this is the thing. Most of the people who go or have visions of doing that have this extraordinary egocentricity that they will have some mechanism of creating a civilization or whatever. And they have, within the civilization we already live in, created enough understanding of themselves that they don't have a sophisticated bone in their body in terms of a philosophical proposition. Why would you, I talked to Ken Livingstone once, who said to me, if you were sending an explorer out into space to find another planet, prospecting for another planet, when you got to that planet, would you divide it up like we've done Earth? Give just a few people all the access to the resources of energy, a few people to most of the land, and so on. And the truth is, you wouldn't. But
no,
the people who are going there are people who believe fully and have profited from those type of constructs, aren't they? So we've got no hope if they get there. No hope at all.
Very true.
Very true. Well, I have some book recommendations for sci-fi novels that I'd love to send you.
Are you a sci-fi fan?
I am a huge sci-fi fan, yes.
Are you? Are you a fan of Kim Stanley Robinson?
Stanley Robinson, yes, very much so.
In a COP 4 years ago.
It doesn't matter, they're all the same.
No.
Not true. No, the COP, yeah.
Actually,
I thought you meant sci-fi.
No,
they're not all the same, because I was at that one and I haven't been to any others. And I wouldn't go to another. But Kim Stanley Robinson came to give a talk, and it was like Bono or the Rolling Stones had turned up. He seems to be a very popular fellow.
Yes, he's very, very popular. One of my favorites.
Is he?
Yeah, but the one I was actually thinking of was not Kim Stanley Robinson. There is a really wonderful series about 200 years in the future, which is all about Mars, the moon, the outer belt, and Earth have all been colonized. And they are, and who knows what would actually happen, but they've all been they've all created their own encompassing area. So in their own planet or on their own asteroid, they have become that entity which is fighting against them. They're fighting against each other on a planetary scale, which I think is a really interesting premise. I won't give anything else away. I'll send it through.
Well, how consoling that we go to new territories and we still want to beat 9 bells out of each other. It's great, isn't it?
I have to be honest, I don't know if that's going anywhere, but we will see. One day maybe we'll reach utopia.
I think the trouble is, have you ever read a book called Some by David Eagleman?
No, I haven't.
Some, more people I know reckon it's their favorite book ever written than any other book. And it's only about 120 pages long. It's inspired by a book by Italo Calvino written in the 60s called Invisible Cities, in which Marco Polo meets Kublai Khan. So the greatest traveler of all time meets the emperor of the greatest empire of all time, in which Kublai says to Marco, "You're the greatest traveler. Tell me the great cities in my domain." And for 42 chapters, he tells him about a city at a time in each chapter. At the end, Kublai says, "Do you always tell the truth?" He said, and Marco says, "No, I lied. There is only one great city in your whole empire, and I've described it 42 times. It is Venice." And it's just a beautiful, beautiful book. Anyway, David Eagleman, who's a brain surgeon, copied the style. Like each chapter is 3 or 4 pages long, and it's 42 visions of paradise, right? And it starts brilliantly. The first vision is, you're worried about dying, but someone says to you, you can die and then be amongst those you loved and knew on earth. You are now in paradise with these people you knew and loved. Now imagine, if you will, eternity. And
oh, brilliant.
the moral of the tale is get out more, see more people.
Yeah.
I think,
don't try and be just with the same ones.
Yeah.
All right, on that note, let's wrap this up, because we've had a very interesting chat, and we, I think, are all about to run out of time. So thank you so much, Tim. This has been absolutely fascinating and very inspiring. We should go find some bankers and ask them for a couple of 100 million, won't we, Mike?
Definitely. We're going to learn how to make them not say no easily.
Yeah.
Indeed.
We'll give it a shot.
Make no harder than yes. That's the key, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Tim.
It was a great pleasure. And next time, if we do another podcast, we'll talk about things like Eden. So
that's good.
That's great. Well, I'm sure I'll be working with you guys before long on something exciting. Definitely. So stay alive long enough, okay, guys?
All right.
We'll
Thanks,
do
Tim.
our best. See you soon. Thanks,
Bye.
Tim.
Bye.